Hey, what's up, everybody? Good afternoon. Wanted to do a quick video, just talking a little bit about this subject matter because it's obviously big in the news this week. Tomorrow, I want to just start focusing on the Taylor Ramirez fight because obviously that's a massive, massive fight that's not getting enough news. I want to talk about that. Maybe we'll do a live video here on my channel after the weigh-in for that fight. But I wanted to put you guys onto a video that I saw by, let's see if I can share my screen real quick. Give me 1 second, guys. Boom. Well, I paused it on the ad, but yeah, let me see if I can skip this ad. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Okay, by Mr. Ring IQ Boxing Talk. And this video is called, well, it's a chronological breakdown timeline of how the undisputed championship at heavyweight has been blocked in one way or another, going back really to 2014. So this is something that I think a lot of you guys, particularly younger guys, or those of you who are newer to the sport, and those of you who only really watch one particular fighter or one particular platform and don't really watch all of boxing and trust most legitimate boxing news sources, there's a lot of information that you're unaware of. So I'm going to tag a link to Ring IQ's video in a pinned comment on my video here. I highly recommend you guys check that out because he really, really breaks it down, gives a lot of nuance and detail. Okay. And I don't have the time to do that. I got some meetings to jump to this afternoon. So what I really wanted to do real quick is go back to how we got where we are right now. Okay. I think a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with the situation right now. The love triangle between Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and Anthony Joshua, and the arbitration ruling and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Let me state for the record, first off, that I don't blame Deontay Wilder one bit for wanting a third fight and wanting a chance at redemption, wanting to get back at Tyson Fury and avenge that loss, or what many people feel was two losses, but especially that dominant loss in the rematch last year. That's a natural human instinct. Any of us would feel the same way. A grown-ass man, an alpha dog, is going to want a chance to get that loss back. I completely understand. I don't blame Deontay Wilder one bit. But there is a track record here that literally goes back to 2014. And again, I'll go back there in a minute here, that has prevented complete unification of the heavyweight division for the first time in the four-belt era. Now, to be clear, during the four-belt era, we had guys that were the man, right? We knew Lennox Lewis was the man. We knew Vladimir Klitschko was the man. Right now, Tyson Fury is seen as the legitimate lineal champ right now, but we really, really need that fight between Fury and Joshua to know who the man in the division is, okay? And that fight's going to be held up. And if you're Deontay Wilder, once again, I understand the instinct. I understand Tyson Fury, Bob Arum completely screwed this up. This is 100% on them. They signed the contract. They were, I think they weren't very honest when talking about the so-called date that had passed, the deadline, and going forward and saying, we're not worried about this arbitration, when really, obviously now we know that there was something to all that. So they mishandled this, okay? I'm not trying to defend Tyson Fury's side or especially Bob Arum's side. Bob, by the way, has really had a rough couple weeks. That Taylor Ramirez, it's a complete catastrophe, the promotion for that fight, which is the fight of the year. So you know, I'm not sitting here wanting to beat up on anybody, but I do think some blame lies on all sides. I think all of us got taken for a ride with this whole situation. Obviously, the majority of the blame is on Arum and Fury's side, but if you're Deontay Wilder, okay, this isn't the first time that he and his team somehow, some way have gotten in the path and blocked the road to undisputed at heavyweight. And this goes back 6-7 years. And again, the first comment here on the video before we even went live by this guy, 2Tay4TV, why is the media trying to blame Wilder as if Tyson didn't sign a contract for a third fight? he's right in the sense that Tyson signed the contract for the third fight. I understand that. I don't think anyone's blaming Wilder, but once again, I do think Wilder's side could have handled this better, because going back to last year, I mean, what has he done for the past year except accuse his former trainer and his former opponent of attempted murder and collusion and corruption for basically the entire industry of boxing? Okay. So there's a lot of people pissed off at Wilder in the business, and I'm not one of them. I don't give a damn about any of that stuff. I just want progress. I want to see the top two heavyweights in the sport fight to give us undisputed for the first time. But once again, I keep trying to drill this point home, but I keep skipping over it. If you're Deontay Wilder, not only is it the best thing for you, okay, to take step aside money right now and fight the winner next year, not only is that the best thing for you in terms of legacy, not only is it the best thing for you in terms of redemption, but it's the best thing for you in terms of your bank account. Let me explain why. If Fury and Wilder fight for a third time this year, and that's probably what's going to happen later this summer, in the fall, whatever it is, that fight is not going to do as much business commercially as the rematch did last year. It's impossible. That rematch was before COVID, the pandemic, all of it. It wasn't remotely competitive. There was no controversy. It's not as if there was a bad decision on the scorecards that people disagree with, like a Canelo Golovkin situation or something like that. It's not as if there was a bad referee decision or something that people have an issue with. There was no performance-enhancing drugs involved or any foul play, whatever. Forget the conspiracy theory nonsense. None of that happened, right? So there's zero controversy. It was very definitive, the result that you got. So there's very little interest outside of Deontay Wilder's diehard fan base, which really they don't watch a lot of boxing. They watch Deontay Wilder. Outside of that group, which is small but very, very loud, particularly on social media, there's not a whole lot of interest in this fight. Maybe it does 500,000 pay-per-view buys, okay? So you're not going to get anywhere near the amount of money that you got in the rematch last year. That's first off. You get much more money fighting the winner between Fury and Joshua next year. That fight was set to happen in Saudi Arabia for what, $155 million site fee? That crushes all previous records. That's a massive, massive fight. The winner of that fight, you fight them, dude, that's a massive fight again. That's a huge pay-per-view, career high payday, probably another career high site fee if they bring it overseas. But even if they bring it here to America and Vegas pay-per-view, that's a monster fight. So if you sit back and you accept step aside money now, you get a couple $1 million for sitting on your butt. You get more money next year, but you also get more hardware because you'll be fighting for the completely unified, undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, Ring Magazine championship, Lineal championship, and all the alphabet titles, right? So you're fighting for more hardware, you're fighting for more money, but also on top of all that, I mean, that affects your legacy, right? You're also the good guy in this situation. That leads to redemption because you helped make unification possible. Even though you had the right to that third fight immediately, you said, hey, man, I'll let the right thing happen here. What's best for boxing, the fans, everybody. I'll take some step aside money, let these two fight. I'll fight the winner. That would go a long way to redeeming Deontay Wilder's image in the eyes of fans and many people in the boxing industry that he's totally trashed in the last few years, especially the last 12 months, mostly because of things he has said and done outside the ring, not because of anything necessarily inside the ring. But I'm not going to, go down that rabbit hole and give all those details. But on top of all that, it gives him the best chance for victory because he could do a tune-up fight against somebody like Charles Martin, get some more easy money, get back in the win column, score a highlight reel knockout, get people talking again on social media. Boom. You know what I'm saying? If he fights Charles Martin and Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury in the crowd, boom. I mean, that markets itself. Then if Wilder's in the crowd for their fight later this year, that helps market it too. And then he's contractually obligated, negotiate the purse split and all that stuff in the amended contract, and you're set up and legally protected to fight the winner next year. That is the best case scenario for all parties involved, most of whom Deontay Wilder himself. But if you look at the track record, I highly doubt that's what's going to happen. And that's what Ring IQ Boxing Talks video talked about. And again, he went into a lot of detail. He put a bunch of graphics and stuff and source material that you guys can look at. I don't have the time to go through all that, okay? Shit's busy this week after this thing blew up. I mean, my phone has been ringing off the hook nonstop. So I'm not going to go into all that, but I did want to go back into how we got here, because once again, if I show this first comment here, and this comment was posted before I even went live by a fight fan who obviously is probably a diehard Deontay Wilder fan. And I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, dude, but I'm guessing you're pretty new to the sport and you don't watch a whole lot of the sport outside of Deontay Wilder fights. And you probably don't understand some of the history of how we got where we are. So I want to go back to the previous era, the Klitschko era, if you will, specifically the Vladimir Klitschko era. And I want to talk specifically about the WBC title, heavyweight title, because, hold on one second. I am having issues here. I was pulling up. If you guys go to BoxRec, you can actually see, you can click on a title and you can see the lineage of that title. You can like follow who's held it. But if you go back to, I think, all the way, I think it was 2003, Vitaly Klitschko won the WBC heavyweight championship that had been vacant once Lennox Lewis retired, right? So he held that championship, I want to say, for like a year. And, oh, here we go. Yeah. I just want to make sure I get these dates right, guys, because if I don't, the Twitter will kill me. Yes, Vitaly Klitschko, 2004. Fights for the WBC championship against Corey Sanders. He holds that title for about a year, and then there was a fight set up with Hasim Rahman, and Vitaly Klitschko is injured, has to retire due to injuries. So what happens to that title? Well, this was right around the time Vladimir Klitschko had lost to Layman Brewster. He lost in 2004, and then he began the process of kind of rebuilding himself for a year or so. So he was out of the picture right there. So it's understandable that he wasn't fighting for that WBC title, although he probably could have fought for a vacant title. But either way, Hasim Rahman has it, and that title gets passed around for the next 4 years. Okay, Vitaly Klitschko is out of the ring from 2004 to 2008. He's essentially retired. In fact, he officially did retire during that time. Hasim Rahman, I think, briefly has it. Then Oleg Maskayev has it. Then Samuel Peter gets it in 2008. Samuel Peter, the one that Vladimir Klitschko beat in 2005 for an IBF and WBO mandatory. So during this time when Vitaly's gone, right, Vladimir Klitschko rebuilds himself, works with Emmanuel Stewart, improves immensely, builds his confidence back up, and starts cleaning out the division and ends up winning all the titles except for the WBC. The WBC, right now, Mauricio Suleiman's running it. His father used to run it, right? His father had a questionable, concerning, some would say corrupt relationship with Don King that went back decades, okay? And this went up until the time of the senior Suleiman's death. So basically, that title immediately goes to Don King. And there's a brief period of time in the mid-2000s where Don King essentially holds all 4 championship belts. I want to say it was Chris Bird, Layman Brewster, John Ruiz, and then Hasim Rahman. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure those were the 4 alphabet guys. Could have easily unified the division. Don King could have easily, at that time, done a heavyweight tournament and completely unified the division. You could have had an undisputed champion for the first time in a 4-belt era with all 4 titles. Never happened, right? Because I don't know why, but there's a lot of history there that I could go into. Just look some of the reasons up. It's all out there. But anyway, Vladimir Klitschko, an outsider, right, that Don King tried to sign the Klitschkos, and he could see that, they could see that he was trying to scam them. They didn't like him. They stayed away from him. So there was always kind of this bad blood there. Well, systematically, one by one, Vladimir works on taking all those titles. And he does. He eventually wins all those titles. And all those, they were at one point in Don King's hands. They, over the years, go into the Klitschko's hands, specifically Vladimir. WBC, though, remains in Don King's hands. And in 2008, Sam Peter, again, who had already been beat by Vladimir, he has the championship. Vitaly Klitschko comes back from retirement in 2008. And because he is the WBC champion emeritus, and him and his Management worked that out with the BC, so he was legally protected. He gets a crack at Sam Peter. What happens? He beats the shit out of Sam Peter, 8th round stoppage, and now Vitaly Klitschko has that WBC title. From 2008 up through 2012, when he retires for good. So at this point, now by 2012, let's go back to Vladimir Klitschko. Okay, by 2012, I'm looking. He had unified all these other championships. He was the number 1 guy and had fought the number 2 guy several times. He had beat Ruslan Shagayev, and that's where the lineal championship started for him. I believe at this point he was the Ring Magazine champion and the lineal champion. The WBA tried to screw him there, but he ends up beating Shagayev and becoming the man in the division, ends up fighting Sam Peter once again, dominates him in the rematch, avenges his loss to Layman Brewster, dominates him in the rematch, essentially beats every top contender in the division. Vitaly Klitschko's run was fairly weak. Vladimir Klitschko beat all the top guys in the division, though, so you really can't blame Vitaly. Vitaly's best win was probably Chris Arreola, who we'll come back to in just a minute. So by 2012, Vladimir is the man. He's the champion. He's recognized by the ring as the champion. He's the lineal champion. He has all the sanctioned organization titles except for one. So what does the WBC do in 2012 when Vitaly retires? Keep in mind, guys, that for years, they had benefited the WBC from the sanctioning fees from Vitaly Klitschko over there in Germany, where when the Klitschkos fought, half the country watched, right? And tens of millions of people, sometimes over 100 million total worldwide, would watch the Klitschko fights. They were a big deal over in Europe, maybe not as much here in the States, but over in Europe, they're big stars. And the WBC is profiting from that with the sanctioning fees. So what did they do in 2012? Did they offer a fight with Vladimir Klitschko for the vacant title? Wouldn't that make sense? If you're the WBC and you've been working with Vitaly, Vladimir's now the man. Why don't you have him fight your top-rated contender and unify the whole damn thing? Undisputed, right? No, we go back to that questionable, concerning, possibly corrupt relationship with the Suleiman family and Don King. And what ends up happening is Berman Stavern fights for the WBC title. Now, he had fought, I think in 2013, he had fought Chris Arreola, who Vitaly Klitschko already beat, right? And Stavern beat Arreola pretty decisively. 12-round decision, but he dropped Arreola, and it was pretty much I think 10 rounds to 2 kind of a fight, 118, 109 kind of a fight. That's so one judge had at 118, 109. Other 2 judges had at 117, 110. Keep in mind, this was a fight in the greater Los Angeles area, just outside of LA in California. Chris Arreola, of course, is a California fighter. So in his own backyard, the judges scored it 10 rounds to 2 for Stavern. There was no need for a damn rematch. What do we get? A rematch. A rematch for the vacant WBC championship. Even though Vladimir Klitschko was the man in the division that cleaned out the entire division, again, he held every other possible title. WBA, WBO, IBF, IBO, Ring Magazine Championship, Lineal Championship. He had beat everybody in the division. He was the number 1 guy and had beat the number 2 several times over. The WBC doesn't have him fight for the vacant title. They have Berman Stavern and Chris Arreola, who Vitaly, their previous title holder, had already beat, fight for the vacant title once again because Chris Arreola was coming off a loss to Stavern in the first fight. This was a rematch. So this made absolutely no damn sense. And what this was the WBC protecting that investment, that relationship with Don King on the Berman Stavern side. On the Chris Arreola side, if he somehow won, they got their first Mexican-American heavyweight title holder, which is something that the WBC has been trying to get for years. It's been one of their top goals to get a Mexican or Mexican-American heavyweight champion with the WBC belt. That has been one of their top priorities, and they have tried so hard to do it, right? So that's what this was. They were protected on both sides of that equation. Meanwhile, the top guy was shut out politically. So WBC title, 2012. Now, the reason why I'm going back here, guys, is because it all is part of a linked chain of events that comes up to right now, our ongoing situation. And for those of you who are just jumping on, I highly recommend you check out a video that Ring IQ Boxing posted that breaks down the chronological timeline of events of how Deontay Wilder and his side have stalled and blocked undisputed at heavyweight since 2014. This has been going on for 6 or 7 years. And that's why some people are pissed off right now. Maybe not pissed off, maybe just annoyed. Anyway, 2012, Vitaly Klitschko retires. Berman Stavern ends up fighting for the vacant title, wins, has 0 defenses. Let me double check that. Yeah, 0. So he wins this title in May of 2014, and the WBC, everybody involved, immediately forces a mandatory fight. And so Stavern sits on his butt for the rest of 2014, never gets a voluntary defense, right? And he goes right into a fight with Deontay Wilder in January of 2015. At this time, Wilder was pretty much a prospect. But because of the politics of boxing and Al Heyman has really kind of become the new Don King as it relates to the WBC. They just replaced Don King with Al Heyman. This was essentially a business transaction. Don King selling that title to Al Heyman and the WBC buying into the Al Heyman business in the heavyweight division. If you look at the PBC right now, most of their title holders, WBC, the WBA is bought into Al Heyman as well. And to be fair, the WBO bought into Top Rank and Bob Arum years ago. So this is something that you see across the board with a lot of these sanctioning organizations, but we're talking specifically about the BC right here. So the first defense for Berman Stavern, he fights Deontay Wilder and gets beat. Now, just before that fight, there was talk in Vladimir Klitschko's camp of possibly offering, because I think the way it was set up was Stavern was the title holder, and I think Wilder was his mandatory, right? So Stavern had to fight Wilder, but there was talk of, hey, Vladimir Klitschko, I will pay you. Vladimir Klitschko's side was saying, Deontay Wilder, I will pay you step aside money so that we can have an undisputed championship fight with Stavern, and then you are contractually obligated or mandated to fight the winner. The winner has to fight you. Right. And Wilder at this time had never made $1 million. Right. Wilder at this time had never even made. I'm scrolling back here. Who was his best win before Stavern? Maybe I was going to say maybe Malik Scott, but I don't know if that fight was on the up and up. Maybe an ancient Sergey Lykovich, maybe Audley Harrison. Yeah, it wasn't Lykovich. He had lost 4 of his last 6 coming in. Maybe Audley Harrison, perhaps, was Deontay Wilder's best win coming into that fight. So he was basically a prospect, but he had negotiated his way into that mandatory position. And so the Klitschko said, we'll pay you step aside. We do a unification. You fight the winner. Then you can fight for all the marbles. And Deontay Wilder basically went on record, and there's guys, again, go to the video Ring IQ posted, but he sources it. He basically went on record saying, you got to pay me $10 million step aside for me to sit on the sidelines so you can fight Stavern, knowing damn well the Klitschko-Stavern fight was maybe worth $10-15 million total, that whole fight. And Deontay Wilder had never made $1 million himself yet, right? I believe his first 7-figure payday was the Stavern fight. It might have even been after that, but probably the Stavern fight. Either way, he had never even made $1 million. And he's demanding $10 million in step-aside money, knowing damn well that Klitschko-Stavern, that fight itself was maybe worth $15 million or something like that. So this was essentially his way of saving face publicly to his fans, but ultimately not wanting any part, because he didn't want to fight Klitschko. Bottom line, they knew Klitschko was going to beat Stavern, and they wanted no part of Klitschko. In fact, and I've talked about this on my channel for years, I've talked to people that were close to Deontay Wilder's camp and had worked in his camp during that time. I know people that worked in the Klitschko camp. You guys have heard some of the tales of the sparring sessions between Klitschko and Wilder. I'm not going to go and beat that dead horse. But there was basically a gentleman's agreement that Wilder was never going to fight Klitschko. Klitschko was never going to fight Wilder. And after Klitschko reign, he was going to kind of walk into the sunset politely, and it was going to be time for Wilder to have his reign. That was basically the plan and the gentleman's agreement there. They wanted no part of fighting Vladimir Klitschko, and that $10 million step-aside request is just proof of that, okay? So Wilder ends up fighting Stavern in 2015, wins that title, and Vladimir Klitschko later that year in 2015, what happens? Loses to Tyson Fury, right? And then he's out of the ring for 2 years before he fights Anthony Joshua. Fury wins all those titles, but it all blows up because it's discovered he was taking performance-enhancing drugs. Earlier the same year, he fought Klitschko. Nothing ever happened due to that. UCAD completely screwed that case. By the way, the entire media here in America and all the Deontay Wilder fans didn't give a shit about that until after Fury tapped Wilder's ass in the rematch last year. None of them mentioned it. I was one of the few in media that even talked about it responsibly. But Fury was out of the ring for a few years, right? We all know what happened there. He gets stripped by Ring. He gets stripped of all the sanctioning organizations. So all of it blows up. So what happens subsequent after 2015? Anthony Joshua ends up kind of doing what Vladimir Klitschko had done a decade before that. He ends up kind of slowly collecting all the titles and cleaning out the division and becoming the guy who held all the hardware, except for, say it again with me, the WBC title. And you guys know that there have been multiple occasions where Wilder has turned down offers from Eddie Hearn, from DAZN. There was a $100 million deal that was guaranteed 2 fights with Joshua. It's always been Wilder's side turning down those fights. So there have been multiple chances for Undisputed at heavyweight since 2014. There have been many, many chances. And every single time, most of the time, the overwhelming majority of the time, the entity blocking those chances at complete undisputed unification of the heavyweight division for the first time in the 4-belt era is none other than Deontay Wilder and his management. So there is a track record here, guys. And that is why when you come to the current situation, there are people in the boxing industry, and I'm telling you guys what I can tell you on the record. There's a lot off the record that I can't say here on this video that I know about as it relates to this situation. A lot of nasty shit that has happened behind the scenes that I can't even get into. I'm just giving you the shit that's on the record. But people in the industry know about this stuff, and we talk about it off camera, offline, of course. So there's a lot of history here that goes back 6-7 years that has delayed progress in the heavyweight division. It robbed Vladimir Klitschko of what should have been his crown. But now you have a situation, a chance where we could have had it, and it could have either been Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. And ultimately, it could be Deontay Wilder if he took step-aside money, let them 2 fight, and then he fights the winner. It could be his crown. He could become the first undisputed, the first American, because he'd be taking it off one of those guys, and they're from the UK. But the first American undisputed heavyweight champion in the 4-belt era. That's epic. That's historic. That's legacy defining. And it stacks up that bank account better than any other potential matchup for Deontay Wilder, right? No Charles Martin or Andy Ruiz fight or whoever else is going to get him anywhere near that kind of bread. Even a third fight with Fury ain't going to get him that kind of money. So it's not only in the best interest of boxing, the fans, everything else. As I said in the beginning of this video, it's in the best interest of Deontay Wilder, his legacy, his redemption, his image with the fans in the boxing industry, and his checkbook, his bank account, to step aside, take some money, fight Charles Martin in the meantime, knock some rust off, get back in the win column, make a couple extra dollars, and then fight the winner next year in a massive fight that's worth well over $100 million. It just makes too much sense. And if this was the first time this kind of thing was being blocked by Shelley Finkel and all the people involved over there, then I don't think people would be as annoyed with it all. But again, there's a track record here, multiple instances going back to 2014. This is absolutely nothing new to people in the know who are familiar with the goings-on of the business of boxing. But I understand for a lot of you out there, this might be kind of new information, and you might not quite understand all the different details. So once again, I'm going to share my screen very, very quickly. Damn it. Here we go. I want to show you guys this video because I think that you need to check it out. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see. Here we go. Here we go. Boom. Here we go. Yes, make sure that you check out this video on Ring IQ Boxing Talk. And he gives a chronological timeline of how Wilder and his team have blocked Undisputed for about 7 years. All right. It's on his channel. Give it a look. And I am not, I need to say this again. I prefaced early on, but I'm going to say it again because if you talk about this stuff in an honest way, there are people with agendas out there on boxing Twitter and some people related to boxing media on the fringes of it, and people related to Wilder's platform who are getting paid in some way or another that will call you all sorts of names and label you all sorts of things. It's unfair, it's unethical, it's shitty, but there's nothing I can really do about it. You know what I'm saying? They're going to do what they do. But telling the truth is the right thing to do. And giving the information and putting it out there for you guys is the right thing to do. I say all this and I follow with, I understand why Wilder wants the third fight with Fury. I don't blame him at all for wanting the third fight and a chance at redemption. Don't blame him at all. That's a natural human instinct. You or I would have the exact same instinct if we were in his shoes. However, cooler heads, if they were to prevail, this could end up benefiting Wilder even more to sit on the sidelines a little bit longer, knock that rust off, fight the winner next year, and to be the best, not only for him, but for all parties involved in the entire sport of boxing and everybody outside of a very small group of people who are very loud on social media. And because of how loud they are, people exaggerate the size of that group. But outside of that very, very small group, nobody wants to see this damn fight again. People want to see progression. They want to see us move forward. They want to see what's happening this weekend at 140 pounds between Ramirez and Taylor. That's what people want to see. And we were this close. And what you guys don't understand is whether it was between Fury and Joshua in 2021 or a couple years back, Wilder and Joshua, or a couple years before that, Klitschko and Wilder, whoever it was, we've been this close to a completely undisputed heavyweight champion for years. And if you go back to the mid-2000s, Don King could have did it because his fighters had all four of the titles and he didn't want to do a tournament and consolidate this thing. These people are fucking with you. These people they're treating you like you're stupid and they're manipulating you. Don't take my word for it. Go back and look at the ratings in 2004, 2005, 2006, and look at who the champions were back then, okay? Don King could have completely consolidated the heavyweight division right then and there. He didn't do it. The WBC could have did the right thing and had Vladimir Klitschko fight for the vacant WBC title against Stavert or whoever else in, 2012? Let me make sure I got my dates. I'm sorry, 2014? I think it was 2014, but they didn't, right? There's certain entities that are tied to this situation going back about 15 plus years now that have held up this process from happening, okay? They're American and the WBC's in Mexico, obviously. So I'll say North American entities holding this thing up, not the global entities involved, but specifically people in North America. So why are they doing that? What is the benefit for them to do it? You have to start asking these questions. But I'll just tell you guys this much, man. We have had the opportunity to completely unify this thing for a long time. And as it relates to 2014 to present, okay, specifically that time frame, there's one entity involved in this every time that has blocked it. One entity. It's not as if one time Klitschko ducked or blocked it, and one time Joshua blocked it, one time Fury, but no, every single time. There have been 3 or 4 instances where we were right here and could have did it. One particular entity, and I'm not even blaming the fighter himself. I'm blaming his management, and I'm blaming all the people around him that enabled this fucking nonsense, and his sycophant cult-like fans who pretend none of this shit ever happened, and completely, they have zero historical reference when it comes to the timeline of chronological events here. I blame all those people, more so than Deontay Wilder himself. He's just doing what he does. So that's how we got here. I thought I'd break all that down. Can't wait for the reaction to this video. Gonna be fun. Tomorrow on my channel, guys, let's do a chat after the weigh-in between Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez, because I don't know, man. I officially picked Taylor, but I'm just, there's something, this gut feel inside of me that's telling me Ramirez. But I told myself I would not go against Taylor after he beat Prograis the way he did. I was so impressed. But yeah. We'll see after the weigh-in. All right, we'll dabble into that after the weigh-in. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoy this. Share it and watch that video I told you about. All right, because there's some more detail given there. I just gave more anecdotal, analytical, or just observations about all that. But he really, really gives some of the details and sources. All right, have a good one, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.